When Sarah Ferguson arrived at the grand recital hall, dressed in quiet anticipation, she had no idea the doors would remain closed. Not to the public, but to her. What followed was a move so deliberate, so unmissably calculated, it sent shockwaves through the aristocracy. Why was the Duchess of York blocked personally by Catherine herself? And why now, after years of apparent peace? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The crowd had gathered with expectation and elegance. The whispers of Charlotte's piano prowess had already made headlines across Europe, marking the occasion as more than a musical milestone. It was a carefully orchestrated show of succession, of image, of dominance. But as the black car rolled up and Sarah Ferguson stepped out, something cracked the polished veneer. Uniformed security, eyes steeled and unshaken, approached with quiet firmness. A message had already arrived, passed down discreetly and without room for question. Entry was not permitted. And not due to oversight, but by design. Eyewitnesses described the shock on Sarah's face, a mix of disbelief and restrained fury. A woman who had once been welcomed into the inner sanctum of Windsor now stood on the outside looking in, barred from witnessing a moment many considered symbolic of the monarchy's future. No explanation was provided. No royal aid appeared to de-escalate. Just a polite but final refusal, carried out with mechanical precision. And behind the walls of the recital hall, the music played on untouched by the confrontation unfolding just beyond earshot. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The seat meant for Sarah a spot with sentimental weight, one once reserved for Princess Diana's confidantes, remained conspicuously empty. Its vacancy said more than 1,000 royal decrees. It screamed exclusion. It signalled a new order where past affiliations no longer earned future access. Catherine's gesture, wrapped in silence, delivered a message that echoed through every marble pillar of the hall. Loyalty must be earned anew, and not all ties are welcome in the new Windsor. Guests seated within began to murmur, some visibly confused, others feigning ignorance. But the weight of the moment was unmistakable. This wasn't about security logistics or misunderstood protocol. This was personal. A battle of legacy and legitimacy being waged not with words, but with deliberate absence. And in that absence, tension flourished, palpable, heavy, and strategically broadcast through every eye in the room. Outside, cameras captured what they thought was just another royal arrival turned away. They didn't realize they were photographing a fracture one that would soon open into something far larger. The Duchess of York, once regarded with a mixture of scandal and resilience, had now been sidelined not by scandal but by strategy. And the person holding the cards? The very woman many underestimated for too long. But to truly understand what led Catherine to slam the door shut on Sarah Ferguson, we must peel back the curtain on the simmering history few dare to expose. They once shared the same halls, the same royal obligations, even the same wary glances across palace rooms. But beneath the public smiles, the bond between Catherine and Sarah Ferguson was always laced with mistrust, veiled warnings, and an invisible scoreboard of grudges. So when did cold politeness turn into open rejection? It began quietly long before Charlotte played her first piano note, back when Catherine was still adjusting to life behind palace gates. Sarah, no stranger to scandal or whispers, watched with a sharp eye as William's future wife entered the royal fold with a calculated calm that unnerved the old guard. While others struggled for footing, Catherine ascended with an eerie ease, and that ease unsettled Sarah. Behind closed doors, she'd make sly remarks, often brushing off the Middletons as commoners with polished shoes. In interviews and memoirs, Sarah offered smiles but never warmth when Catherine's name arose, and the subtle digs did not go unnoticed. Catherine, trained in silence, responded not with words but with exclusion. Years later, Meghan would allegedly recount a conversation with Sarah, where the Duchess of York warned her of the quiet force behind Catherine's gentle demeanour. "She won't raise her voice," Sarah had supposedly said. "But she will never forget." These weren't just words, they were a revelation. Catherine had built her power not on chaos, but on precision. While others chased public sympathy, she secured private loyalty. One by one, she drew the Queen's closest advisors into her confidence. And as her influence deepened, Sarah's position faded into the background, her presence tolerated but no longer welcomed. It wasn't long before Catherine's children George, Charlotte, and Louis became central to the monarchy's projected future. Their charm, their polish, their proximity to the crown, everything about them pushed Beatrice and Eugenie further into the periphery. What Sarah once saw as a bridge to royal redemption through her daughters became a reminder of everything she was denied. The Middletons were no longer outsiders, they were the architects of the new royal identity. And Catherine, at the helm, made it clear that the past would not dictate the future. There were whispers, of course. Occasions where Sarah expected to be included in intimate briefings or family gatherings, only to discover she'd been deliberately left off the list. Each omission chipped away at an already brittle relationship. What had begun as veiled disdain transformed into open resentment. And while Catherine never uttered a public word against Sarah, her actions painted a story louder than any headline. For Catherine, this was not just about rivalry, it was about sovereignty. She wasn't just protecting her children's future, she was erasing potential threats, one silent strike at a time. But this wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Because behind Catherine's poised silence was a power play years in the making. To the outside world, it was merely a child's piano recital. To those seated inside, it was a coronation in miniature, where every seat, every name on the guest list, every smile was political currency. And Catherine made it crystal clear, Sarah Ferguson was no longer part of the kingdom she once flirted with. This wasn't just a proud mother celebrating her daughter's accomplishments. This was a showcase of legacy, elegance, and silent power. Princess Charlotte, poised at the piano, represented more than talent, she embodied the future. A bridge between tradition and transformation. And Catherine knew that this moment, captured and curated, would echo across every headline, social feed, and aristocratic dining table. Every element had been meticulously designed, from the musical selections to the invited audience. But beneath the refinement, something more dangerous simmered, exclusion as strategy. Charlotte's growing presence in the public eye had not gone unnoticed. Whispers within palace circles suggested she was being groomed not just as a royal child, but as a central figure in the monarchy's future image. Soft-spoken, but confident. Creative yet disciplined. A living emblem of modern royalty wrapped in traditional elegance. And this recital? It was her coming out act not to the public, but to the power players watching closely from their seats. Catherine understood this perfectly. That's why this wasn't just about music, it was about message. The guest list was Catherine's first weapon. Only select figures were summoned, individuals whose presence aligned with the image the palace now wanted to project. Respected charity leaders, cultural influencers, and key allies from both political and aristocratic spheres. It was an inner circle event, intentionally closed to anyone who might dilute the message of unity, progress, and unspoken loyalty. Sarah Ferguson, by all accounts, was never meant to be there. Her absence wasn't a logistical error, it was a statement. For months, Sarah had attempted to edge her way back into relevancy, leaning on old friendships and royal sympathies. But Catherine's vision had no room for sentimental relics of the past. Her definition of trusted circle left no space for unpredictability, no tolerance for those who once undermined her ascent. By keeping Sarah out, Catherine didn't just prevent awkward optics, she tightened her grip on who got to witness the shaping of the next royal icon. Behind the carefully managed lighting of the recital hall, Catherine watched as her daughter took her place before the polished keys. Charlotte, unaware of the storm brewing outside, played not just notes but her role in a performance orchestrated to perfection. And in that hall, The audience didn't just applaud a child's talent, they bore witness to a carefully crafted shift. A shift where the past was being gently, firmly and permanently erased from the spotlight. As applause filled the hall and cameras clicked, few realized this recital was merely the setting for a much larger Game of Thrones. She didn't speak to the press, but the fury on Sarah's face said it all. For a woman who had once walked the halls of Buckingham with a princess's pride, the public rejection wasn't just humiliating, it was personal. And within hours, she was making moves behind the scenes no one expected. As the black car pulled away from the gates, what had begun as a royal performance quickly turned into a personal crisis. The Duchess of York, visibly shaken and unable to mask her rage, refused to give the cameras even a glance. Her jaw set, her eyes glassy, and her silence louder than any official statement, Sarah had been dealt a blow she could neither anticipate nor ignore. Minutes later, a brief but tense altercation erupted with a staff member from the venue, an assistant, who had allegedly tried to offer a quiet explanation. Sarah wasn't interested in explanations. Not anymore. She had been locked out of a moment she believed belonged, in part, to her family. And for that, someone had to answer. What followed was a rapid sequence of private calls and encrypted messages. Leaked screenshots later revealed that Sarah had reached out directly to Prince Andrew within the hour, furious and demanding answers. Her message, short and scathing, reportedly read, "They've made it clear. We are not part of this future." Andrew's response was not made public, but palace insiders hinted that his reaction was equally volatile. Beatrice and Eugenie, who had not been present at the recital, were allegedly stunned. Both daughters, who had remained cautiously neutral in past family tensions, were now thrust into the storm, and this time, neutrality would not be an option. Royal advisors, already alerted by Catherine's earlier directive to deny Sarah entry, were now in damage control mode. Phones rang across corridors. Statements were drafted, then scrapped. The media hadn't picked up on the incident yet. But they would. And when they did, the optics would be devastating. A public snub of a royal relative. A visibly hurt mother, and a future queen who had just drawn a line in the sand. Every aide understood the stakes. This wasn't just an awkward exclusion, it was a royal fracture. And fractures never stay quiet for long. Then came the post. It was subtle, but deliberate. On her official social media account, Sarah Ferguson posted a photo of an empty chair beside a rose garden, accompanied by the caption, "Some doors stay closed. But eyes remember who turned the key." It was cryptic, but to those paying attention, it was a shot across the bow. The timing was unmistakable. The implication unmissable. Sarah wasn't playing the victim. She was preparing to fight. But this wasn't just a private embarrassment, it was a signal. A warning. And the palace was already buzzing about the unseen war quietly erupting. She may wear grace like a crown, but Catherine does not rule alone. Sources now confirm a private circle advisors, aristocrats and family members who helped shape the decision to block Sarah Ferguson. And at the center of this strategic axis, a single phrase: protect the future at all costs. For years, whispers of a silent council operating behind palace walls have floated through the corridors of Windsor, often dismissed as rumor. But now, with the fallout from the recital unraveling in real time, those whispers have become deafening. Insiders close to the royal household reveal that Catherine has not simply emerged as a royal figure, she has become an institution unto herself. One that doesn't act impulsively, but methodically. And this move against Sarah Ferguson wasn't emotional, it was endorsed, rehearsed, and strategically aligned. The group behind it? A formidable force referred to within certain circles as the Quiet Court. This inner circle is said to include key royal figures, each carefully positioned. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense demeanour and deep loyalty to the crown, is believed to play a critical role in advising Catherine on legacy and optics. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, reportedly handles social recalibration, guiding which faces remain at the forefront and which must quietly fade. Palace staff, PR architects, and even a handful of discreet aristocrats form the remainder of this fortress-like group. And together, they have begun curating not just Charlotte's image, but the monarchy's entire future. Charlotte's appearances, her mannerisms, her public milestones, nothing is accidental. Everything is filtered through this strategic body, with one shared mission: preserve the image of stability and modern strength. Sarah Ferguson, to them, was a liability. A wildcard from a bygone era, unfiltered, unpredictable, and increasingly out of sync with the image being carved for this next generation. The fear wasn't scandal, but dilution. Letting her in would blur the lines Catherine and her circle had fought so hard to sharpen. What makes this group so potent is its silence. Unlike the chaotic waves that once surrounded Camilla's court, marked by missteps and noisy interventions, Catherine's power network thrives in stillness. No leaks, no headlines, just action. Where Camilla's influence was often reactive, Catherine's is preemptive. Her allies do not clean messes, they prevent them. And their motto, repeated like quiet gospel behind velvet-lined doors, is chilling in its precision: visibility equals legitimacy. Sarah's presence at the recital would have reintroduced an old narrative, a distraction from the story Catherine now commands. Denying her entry was not just about personal tension, it was about reinforcing who belongs in the royal spotlight. And Sarah, with her unpredictable energy and legacy of blurred lines, simply no longer made the cut. And if this hidden council was forging a new royal order, then Sarah Ferguson was simply the first casualty. But she wouldn't go quietly. Blocked from a recital, but not from revenge. Within days, Sarah Ferguson began moving her pieces. And they weren't hers alone. Whispers of long-held secrets, alliances with ex-staffers, and even unnamed ex-royals began circling the palace walls. Catherine may have struck first, but Sarah was done playing nice. She understood the game now, and she understood the stakes. What Catherine had done at Charlotte's recital wasn't just exclusion, it was erasure. So Sarah did what only a seasoned survivor of royal exile could do: she dug up roots. Reports began to surface that she had reached out to former royal aides, individuals who had long left the palace but carried memories and, more dangerously, records. Biographers who had been denied access in the past suddenly found their phones lighting up. Names once buried were being whispered again, names tied not to Sarah, but to Catherine and to the Middletons. Leaks, though still unconfirmed, began trickling into carefully curated media circles. Mentions of private disputes inside the Middleton family, strained communications between Catherine and her brother James, and financial movements that had previously gone unnoticed. None of it definitive, none of it headline-grabbing yet. But Sarah wasn't aiming for scandal. She was building pressure, creating noise, forcing the palace to listen. And it was working. Then came the unexpected blow. Beatrice and Eugenie silently withdrew from an upcoming Windsor engagement. No formal announcement, no statement. Just two missing names from a confirmed list. Their absence sent a clear signal. The divide had cracked into their generation. Behind palace doors, advisors panicked not because of the missed event, but because of what it implied. Catherine's once unquestioned influence was now facing silent dissent. And still, the storm gathered. A high-profile interviewer known for explosive royal exclusives was spotted leaving Sarah's London residence. Speculation erupted. Was Sarah preparing to break her silence on what really happened? Would she name names? Clarify the mystery surrounding her sudden expulsion? The palace refused to comment, but insiders suggested a growing unease among staff, particularly those who had once served under Queen Elizabeth. Their discomfort wasn't rooted in disloyalty, but in contrast. The late Queen had always prized unity over optics, inclusion over polish. Catherine's firm grip, though admired by many, now felt suffocating to those who remembered a different kind of reign. And through it all, one shadow loomed larger than the rest: Prince Andrew. Stripped of royal duties, isolated in public, but still very much Sarah's closest ally. Behind the scenes, he was said to be reaching out to sympathetic former staffers, quietly floating the idea of Sarah's full return to public life. Not as a rebel, but as a wronged royal seeking dignity. And while the public may not be ready to forgive Andrew, his push to rehabilitate Sarah's image carried weight within a palace suddenly worried about loyalty fractures. But retaliation wasn't the only threat Catherine now faced, because this event triggered something far more dangerous: division from within. Behind the palace curtains, fault lines were deepening. Catherine's bold move had unintended consequences, shaking old alliances, testing family loyalties, and forcing even Prince William to confront the escalating fallout. What was meant to protect Charlotte's moment now risked unraveling the fragile unity holding the House of Windsor together. In the days that followed the recital, the glow of applause gave way to a chill of uncertainty. Palace aides reported Prince William's increasing unease behind the scenes. He had supported Catherine's decision privately, wholeheartedly, but the public backlash, the whispers of internal dissent, and the optics of silencing a once senior royal left him navigating a storm he hadn't expected to face so soon. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It was about what this moment symbolized, the monarchy choosing sides when it could least afford to fracture. Zara Tindall and her husband Mike, usually detached from palace politics, were said to be quietly disturbed. They had always prided themselves on keeping above the fray, focusing on family rather than fame. But as Charlotte's recital turned into a battleground of exclusion and symbolism, even they could no longer ignore the undercurrents. Behind closed doors, Zara reportedly voiced discomfort at what she called the overly politicized nature of recent events, her warning aimed more at the palace machine than any one individual. But the meaning was clear. Prince Edward, ever the quiet bridge between factions, stepped forward in a rare attempt to mediate. According to one aide, he reached out personally to both sides, hoping to cool tensions before the rift widened beyond repair. His efforts were noble, but his influence, many admitted, lacked the weight it once held. Catherine's camp was resolute. Sarah's silence was only growing louder. And in between stood William, torn between protecting his wife's authority and preserving what little cohesion remained. Camilla, in all of this, chose silence. Not a word of support for Catherine, not a single gesture of sympathy towards Sarah. A master of ambiguity, she offered nothing that could be used against her later. To some, this was wisdom. To others, it was cowardice. But her silence only added to the discomfort rippling through the family. It was Princess Anne who, according to several reports, issued the clearest warning. In a private conversation with Catherine, she allegedly cautioned against letting exclusion become routine. Discipline, she said, isn't always about who you cut out. Sometimes it's about who you keep in, for the sake of the crown. Coming from Anne, a woman known for loyalty and steel, the words struck deeply. And then came the king. His voice, rarely used in family disputes, was suddenly present. He summoned senior aides and issued a simple but stern message: focus on duty, not division. No names were mentioned, but everyone understood what he meant. The house was shaking. If they didn't act soon, it might crack beyond repair. And just when it seemed the storm couldn't grow more ferocious, the past returned with a vengeance through a voice long silenced. She wasn't there. But everyone felt her. Diana's spirit loomed heavily over Charlotte's recital. The child so often compared to her late grandmother, the blocked guest who was once her closest friend, and the daughter-in-law whose silence now echoed louder than any applause. Was Catherine honouring Diana or rewriting her legacy? The air inside the royal circle had turned colder not from scandal, but from sentiment. Commentators across the nation couldn't help but draw the emotional thread back to Princess Diana. From Charlotte's poised yet gentle demeanour to her growing sense of compassion, seen in brief public interactions, comparisons became inevitable. And on the day of the recital, as cameras captured fleeting moments, the public watched with hearts caught between nostalgia and scrutiny. The echo of Diana's legacy, still unhealed, still powerful, demanded attention. And Catherine knew it. Every move she made that day seemed measured, almost reverent. But reverence and control are not the same. Sarah Ferguson's absence twisted the emotional knife deeper. It wasn't just a former duchess left outside, it was Diana's once most trusted friend, her co-conspirator in laughter, rebellion, and survival within the palace walls. Their bond had endured betrayal and scandal, forged through shared pain. Blocking Sarah wasn't only a strategic play, it was a spiritual rupture. And the public, particularly those who still idealized Diana's warmth and inclusiveness, saw it as a betrayal of her memory. Debate erupted swiftly. Would Diana have supported Catherine's icy exclusion? Would she have applauded a daughter-in-law protecting her child's spotlight? Or would she have demanded the seat next to Charlotte's stage be filled by the woman who once stood by her side when no one else did? Opinions were divided. Some claimed Diana would have admired Catherine's strength. Others insisted she would have seen it as the same cruelty that once drove her from the firm. Insiders whispered that Catherine appeared uncharacteristically emotional in the minutes before the recital began. A fleeting moment alone, a touch to her necklace, and the visible blink of tears sparked speculation. Was it a tribute? A silent conversation with the mother-in-law she never met, but constantly feels compared to? Or was it guilt-heavy and unspoken because the crown she was upholding now demanded actions Diana would have questioned? Diana's legacy, once a sacred relic, had become a weapon, wielded by both sides. For Sarah, it was a shield. A reminder to the world that she, too, had walked with royalty and survived. For Catherine, it had become an invisible bar to surpass, to rise above, even if it meant making choices Diana never would. And so Charlotte's recital, meant to be a gentle crescendo in the life of a young royal, transformed into a ghost-filled battleground. Love, loss, ambition, and memory collided beneath the surface, spilling over into the court of public opinion. But while Diana's shadow stirred the heart, the final blow would strike at the very image of unity the royals had fought to protect. This wasn't about a recital anymore. It was about control, legacy, and the very soul of a monarchy in transition. In the war between public appearances and private power, Catherine's move may have exposed more than she intended. Because what happens behind closed palace doors never stays there for long. As the echoes of Charlotte's final piano note faded, the press took hold with surgical precision. Articles emerged dissecting not the child's performance, but the seating chart, the absences, the expressions on royal faces frozen in carefully chosen frames. What began as a family moment transformed into a public referendum. Was Catherine's decision to block Sarah Ferguson a show of necessary authority or the quiet unravelling of compassion beneath the crown? Debate spread like fire across tabloids, op-eds, and social feeds. For every voice hailing Catherine as the future queen willing to make hard choices, there was another accusing her of embracing the same cold elitism the monarchy had long claimed to shed. Yet in the eye of this media storm, Sarah Ferguson began to move with a clarity and calculation many hadn't seen in years. Instead of retreating, she leaned into the narrative. Behind-the-scenes sources revealed a sequence of upcoming interviews, photo shoots, and speaking engagements, each one subtly positioning her not as a victim, but as a misunderstood royal matriarch reclaiming her voice. Her image, once tarnished by scandal, was being polished into something powerful, the wronged insider turned redemptive force. And across from her, rising unshaken, stood Catherine, no longer just the Duchess of Cambridge, or the smiling mother at school drop-offs. She had crossed a threshold. To her allies, she had become a steel-spined queen in waiting, unafraid to cut where others feared to speak. But to critics, she now resembled something colder, an operator cloaked in grace, making silent moves with irreversible consequences. Was this rise to power earned through years of service and loyalty, or imposed by forces shaping the palace from within? The larger question haunted every corridor of Windsor: should the monarchy preserve its future through forceful control, or honor its past through inclusive grace? Every action, every silence, now lived under a magnifying glass. And just when it seemed the story had reached its peak, whispers began to surface of a secret recording captured within the recital venue itself. The claim? That a senior royal aide had been overheard discussing the intentional removal of Sarah from the guest list, citing optics and message control. No tape has emerged yet, but the rumor alone has been enough to send panic across palace walls. The recital was never just about Charlotte. It was a mirror reflecting the state of the monarchy itself, torn between tradition and transformation, image and intimacy, duty and division. And as the monarchy continues its quiet war behind the gold-trimmed curtains, one truth remains: even in silence, the crown speaks volumes. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.